morning. My name is Valerie McDaniels, and I am the chairperson for Lansing Human Relations Commission. I am excited about this event. I hope other people show up. If that's okay, we're going to pass the word out about what to do with our children. I'm a retiree from DCFS after 30 years all total with my background. I have been able to travel across this country for 17 years to do accreditation for private agencies as well as public agencies for accreditation. I've been part of tons of committees, chair and part members, but I think the three top committees I was with was the best. One was called SCAN. It's a state legislative committee about child abuse and neglect. It was a committee about child abuse and neglect. Then I was a liaison for Chicago Archdiocese of Chicago for Cook County and for Lake County of Illinois. And then I was also a member of the Salvation Army's Human Trafficking Task Force. And so I enjoyed that. So I want to be able to just bring some highlight in terms of about using child abuse and neglect. Please adore the tables. They have information about it and the walls as well. Get your nail painted for $5 on that. It's going for donation, and we'll get started right now. Okay? Our first person up is going to be Pastor Dwayne Sutton to give us the open prayer.
Amen. Amen. Can we all bow our heads? Father, we love you and we thank you for this is the day that you have made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. We thank you for this event. We thank you for the foresight for the village of Lansing to understand how important it is to bring awareness to human trafficking and kids and the event that we have here. So we just ask that all the information that's shared here is useful, it's knowledgeable, and it goes out and it spreads, and it spreads like your word. We ask that you just cover everyone who's speaking today, give them wisdom to understand that this mission is ultimately about you and not about us. We love you, and we adore you in your son, Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Now we have our mayor. I need to acknowledge some people. There's some trustees in the office. There's in here. There's our mayor here, and my pastor's here. My mom, my husband, and lots of friends and people I got to know over the years, and new people. A lot of new people here.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure for me to be here. My responsibility this morning is to read a proclamation, which I'll do in just a moment, but I just had a few words for you. Most of them are about Valerie. Since its inception in 2018, the Lansing Human Relations Commission has been finding ways to accomplish the goals that were established for them. To unite our community, develop civic pride, and to strive to gain involvement from all Lansing entities. Last April, I was extremely proud to assist our HRC chairman, Valerie McDaniels, in a very small way as she organized our first Prevent Child Abuse Awareness event. I considered that event to be hugely successful, informative, and a shining star for our HRC. I know that immediately after that event last April, Valerie began planning to bring us all together here today. This topic is a passionate one for Valerie. I remain grateful that she is teaching us to talk about this difficult subject and to be advocates for the children of our village. Congratulations, Valerie.
Amen.
Okay, and here's our... Did you want to read the proclamation?
No.
It's okay, you can. So our village board meeting a couple weeks ago, we read this proclamation as it was our last village board meeting until after the beginning of April, until after today actually. So this is a proclamation on Child Abuse Prevention Month. Whereas every child deserves to grow up in a nurturing environment free from abuse, neglect, violence, or endangerment of any kind. And whereas child abuse and neglect causes serious harm to child development and has lifelong effects that endanger safety, hinder permanency in relationships, and reduce well-being, creating greater demands on our society. And whereas all citizens should be aware of the serious problem of child abuse and how to prevent it, and every community should be involved in efforts that support parents in raising their children in a safe, nurturing, and healthy environment. And whereas child abuse prevention is a shared responsibility, with everyone having a role to play, and effective child abuse prevention strategies succeed because of partnerships created among citizens, human service agencies, schools, faith communities, healthcare providers, civic organizations, law enforcement agencies, and the business community and government entities. Therefore, I, Mayor Patricia L. Item, do hereby proclaim April 2023 as Child Abuse Prevention Month in Lansing, Illinois, and encourage all citizens to support child abuse prevention programs and to report suspected child abuse cases to the Illinois Child Abuse Hotline. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Valerie.
Now we have Miss Charita. She's from BeStrongFamilies.org. You may see her running out because she has another engagement. She has a little webinar to do pretty soon. So if you have any questions when she gets done, please do ask.
Good morning, all. Thank you so much, Valerie, for inviting me to be a part of this. My name is Sarita Sashington, and I am from Be Strong Families. We are known across the country as the Cafe People. What that means really is that we create transformative conversations to nurture the spirit of family around well-being, to prevent violence, to encourage relationships. These transformative conversations are designed for parents to learn from each other in a very safe environment. It's a structured conversation where peer-to-peer learning takes place, deep self-reflection, and the building of protective factors. How many of you guys are familiar with protective factors? Yay, of course you are. So those protective factors are so important that we designed a whole process around them to bring attention to those so parents can think about, how am I keeping my family safe? How can I be the change that I'd like to see in my own family? Parent cafes are global now under Be Strong Families. We are in Guam and Philippines and and Australia. We're just about everywhere. And those conversations are now not only focused on protective factors, but on, and being a strong and healthy parent, but also we have conversations that focus on being a whole and healthy person based on vitality domains. So we are always looking to work and connect with those organizations that help to keep families safe. And I just want to add that if you know anything about parent cafes, we were created for parents, by parents, and with parents. So it is a parent-focused model. And it was created as a way to prevent child abuse. So I'm super excited to be at a table and in the room with people who love children and want to keep them safe, and like we do. So I'm not gonna stay long, but I am gonna leave some information if anybody has any questions and would like to follow up with me later. I think this is a great resource, and I hate that the rain kept people away, but I'm glad that those who are here, to get the info, are gonna walk away feeling refreshed and renewed from all the great resources that people are gonna share today. So thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? All right. Now we have Ms. Farr. She is from Prevent Child Abuse of Illinois, and we welcome her.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
So the theme of Child Abuse Prevention Month 2023 is Building Together, Prevention in Partnership. To Prevent Child Abuse Illinois, building together means building strong communities, building strong families, and raising strong, happy, and healthy children. None of us can do these things alone. Every strong community needs an active group of citizens to advocate for them. Every parent needs a strong support system to give them stability when times get tough and to celebrate with them when times are good. And every child needs a strong, caring adult in their corner looking out for them. At Prevent Child Abuse Illinois, we talk a lot about childhood trauma, and I'm sure that's like a buzzword, so I'm sure a lot of you have already heard about childhood trauma. And ACEs, which stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. Experiencing ACEs and childhood trauma can affect a child's brain development and can even have long-term effects that last until adulthood. That is why preventing child abuse and neglect and providing positive childhood experiences is so important. And why prevention in partnership is so important. When we work together to support each other's work, we can build those strong communities that have good jobs, safe spaces, and ample resources for our families. When we work together, we can build those strong families that put the welfare of their children first and can reach out for help when they need it. And when we work together, we can prioritize the health and well-being of every child. And I want to talk a little bit about drug-endangered children. The National Alliance for Drug-Endangered Children defines drug-endangered children as children who are at risk of suffering physical, emotional harm as a result of drug use, possession, manufacturing, cultivation, and distribution. They may also be children whose caretakers' substance misuse interferes with the caretaker's ability to the parent to provide a safe and nurturing environment. And that's legal or illegal drug use. The National DEC believes that the best way to address the needs of drug-endangered children is a coordinated response that puts children's needs first, and the way to do that is through the DEC approach. The DEC approach is a multidisciplinary strategy to change the trajectory of a drug-endangered child's life through recognition of a common vision, ongoing collaboration between disciplines, like all of us here, and ongoing change in practices and policies, all of which increase the likelihood of better outcomes for drug-endangered children. The approach trains practitioners to form community-based partnerships across multiple disciplines to effectively collaborate with their mutual interests, resources, and responsibilities. I do oversee the Cook South Alliance, and basically we just want to come together and all agencies within our communities to help our children. So say for instance, you have a police officer that goes into a home and the children might not be there and they're there for arrest, but you see child things. So you see toys, you might see small clothes, you may see a bedroom. So our hope is that that officer would say, you know what, I need to contact this school in the morning and say, this child's probably not going to be ready for today, knowing that possibly the parent has been arrested. And so it's just a thing of contacting each part of that child's life and then working together to change it, to make it a different outcome. So we at PCA Illinois are so grateful for our partners and for everyone working to prevent child abuse and neglect. Of course, we work with DCFS, HSHS, home visiting programs, counseling services, WMCAs, crisis nurseries, law enforcement, schools, faith-based organizations, and so many more are all on the front line supporting families and providing safe place for children. We have long said that everyone has a role to play in keeping children safe, and that is very true. It is the responsibility of every adult to make sure the children in their families, in their work, and in their neighborhoods are safe. But we are also part of a bigger community, a partnership that is working together to build happy, healthy childhoods for all children and to prevent child abuse. So Friday, April 7th is Wear Blue Day. He has on a t-shirt. And we encourage everyone to put on your best royal blue outfit and share pictures with us on Facebook and social media. After all, children are our future and every child deserves a great childhood. Thank you.
She mentioned ACEs, which is on the wall up here of average childhood experiences, and a lot that comes from children what they become adults because of the excessive abuse they received as a young. So you have your health problem, your mental health problems, you have your diabetes, you have a whole bunch of issues that adults have, and relationship problems. They don't know how to deal with other people because they never had that taught to them when they was a child. So now we're pushing more positive childhood experiences. So we're looking toward that way. And I was thinking about something that the director of PCA said. She made a comment that, back in the day, we focused on trying to bring awareness with children with marks on their bodies and on their faces and all that stuff. But people got turned away from that. People are turning away from child abuse. It's just hard to accept that it happens. A lot of times people who within the realm, the film, the school, the teacher, police officers, child welfare agencies are familiar with it, but it's hard for people, normal people, to understand the seriousness of what we have here. So if kids can have an experience, a positive childhood experience, what a life for our kids would be when they become adults. They won't have Chief Philip and his staff on them, right? There you go. Thank you. Oh, this is Miss Monica.
That's actually Karina. I'm Monica. She can go first.
Oh, okay.
We're switching up.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Monica Chakowski, and I work for La Rabida Children's Advocacy Center. We are affiliated with La Rabida Children's Hospital, which is located in Chicago, but we have an off-site location located in Park Forest. So we are connected with the Park Forest Police Department. We have our own separate wings, so there's 2 separate entrances, the police department entrance and then our entrance. So what we do at the Children's Advocacy Center, and Karina and I are actually, she'll kind of piggyback off of me as soon as I'm done. Karina and I used to work together, but now Karina's at the Chicago CAC. She sadly left us, but I've kind of taken over her role in going out and giving trainings. So a little bit about La Rabida Children's Advocacy Center. Often the CAC is referred, our Children's Advocacy Center, we use the acronym CAC, and we do what we call forensic interviews. So forensic interviews are conducted on children ages 2 to 17 and then adults with cognitive disabilities. So the interviews that we do these interviews on behalf of law enforcement and DCFS. All of our referrals have to come from law enforcement and DCFS. Oftentimes we will have a parent that will call us and may have some suspicion of abuse, or their child may be acting out in different ways and would like a forensic interview. So what we'll do is we'll encourage them to go to their local law enforcement agency and to make a report or to call the DCFS hotline. So once those cases are referred on over to us, we kind of have a process that we go through. So we'll review the reports, and then our intake coordinator, I do assist with doing intake. We will contact the parents and make sure that we give them ample time to explain the process, because I'm sure, I guess, how many of you are familiar with a forensic interview or have heard of a forensic interview or, okay. So oftentimes when we call these families, they are not familiar with this process. There's a lot of questions, they're unsure of what's going to happen next. Law enforcement's involved in their life, DCFS is involved in their life. It's a very scary thing. So when we do contact these families, we make sure that we give them ample amount of time to explain the process and answer any questions that they may have. With our forensic interviews, one thing that we inform parents of is they are not allowed to be present in the room during the forensic interview. So I actually am a forensic interviewer myself. I've done forensic interviews for La Rabida CAC, and then I did some contract work up in the 2nd and 3rd district for forensic interviews while one of their interviewers was on maternity leave. So I've done a couple hundred forensic interviews. And so we just tell parents that they are not allowed to be in the room with their child. It's only the child and the forensic interviewer in that room. And then live, we have a live viewing system. So we actually have 2 interviewing rooms and then 2 live observation rooms. So that's where we'll have law enforcement, DCFS, and the state's attorneys viewing the forensic interviews live through a TV. During the interview, we are allowed to take 1 to 2 breaks. I ideally like to take 1 break just so the kiddo's not left in the room by themselves. We will start in the beginning of our forensic interviews just building some rapport, making sure that the child feels comfortable. We won't just bring them into this room and start asking them, what happened to you, who touched you, things along those lines. It's a very open-ended, child-friendly conversation. And we basically just follow the lead of the child. I've done, like I said, hundreds of forensic interviews, and no interview has ever been the same. I've had kiddos that have not wanted to talk to me and that have wanted to write everything down. So we've done that. We've been in the room for 3.5 hours together while they wrote everything down. I've had kiddos who I've tried to interject multiple times. They're like, nope, I'm not done talking. I want to continue talking to you. So we follow the lead of the child, and then we gather all of the information that they are telling us. In order for basically criteria for a forensic interview is sexual abuse, physical abuse, or witnesses to a violent crime. And also within the home, if we have a child who has been sexually abused in the home and their siblings in the home, they may have not made an outcry of abuse, but we like to bring those siblings in as a potential at risk for sexual abuse or a witness to their sibling being abused. I know this year alone, beginning of April, I would say that we're close to probably already 350 to 400 referrals. We are extremely busy. I believe on Monday alone we did 8 interviews. So we do see a lot of cases. And then during the forensic interview, everything is audio and video recorded, so that detective will take that forensic interview with them. We used to get those forensic interviews on DVDs, and they would take those and put those into evidence, but now everything is sent electronically via evidence.com. It makes it easier on us and easier on the detectives. So that way, if they ever have to view this recording back, because like I said, an interview can be up to 2.5, 3.5 hours long. So they're able to view that back without having to re-question the child, because that is something that we are definitely trying to prevent, and why the reason for these forensic interviews. And then after the forensic interviews, we will give the parents an opportunity to meet with the forensic interviewer, law enforcement, and DCFS to give them an overview of what took place during the forensic interview. We want to make sure that parents are aware, and I will say it is all predicated on the investigators on the team. Sometimes we are allowed to give all the details, sometimes we're not, depending on the role that the parent is taking in the investigation. And then what we'll do, though, is why this is so important to us, is that we want to make sure that these parents have the resources to better support their child after the forensic interview. Whether that be counseling, housing, different things along those lines. And I do have a few handouts here that I will pass around to everybody, and I brought extras, so if you guys want to take some with you, I won't bring any back with me. But this first one is our Children's Advocacy Center book. So basically this is start to finish of what will happen the day of the forensic interview. And then also after the forensic interview, our advocates, we have advocates that also work at La Rabida, will be providing supportive services to those families and following up on a weekly basis to check in and see if they need anything. And then eventually, once the case is brought to court, the advocates can go to court with these families and provide services. And then another piece that I have is a right to a forensic interview flyer. This is something that we give to all of our law enforcement agencies if we do have a family that walks in and is reporting some sort of abuse to their child. They are supposed to be giving the family this flyer. So basically it's just saying that every child has a right to a forensic interview, and something that has recently changed, I guess 2020, so well, that's I guess 3 years ago, not recent, is that we no longer need consents for a forensic interview. So that was a barrier sometimes that we had to work through if parents were like, ooh, I'm not really sure, or if we had unfortunately a parent who was a perpetrator parent. So with this right to a forensic interview and that law that was passed in January of 2020, we no longer need consents for an interview. So as long as we have a child that says, yes, I want to talk to somebody about what has happened, they are more than welcome to come to our agency. Oftentimes we'll see grandparents bringing them, close family friends, aunts, uncles, or even if the child does not have anyone that's close to them or they feel comfortable coming with them, we've seen law enforcement officers bring them as well. And then the last handout that I have is just basically our CAC model and the reason for the forensic interviews. Prior to CACs, children would have to talk to up to 15 people about the abuse that happened. That would be doctors, nurses, law enforcement, DCFS, the state's attorney's office. So we really work to eliminate them having to retell their story, and that is why we audio and video record everything. So thank you guys so much. Valerie, thank you so much for having me, and I'll pass this on to Karina.
Thank you for mentioning it regarding the, back in the day, before we knew of CAC, what their function was going to be when it came about, we were interviewing the kids. The doctors were, the social worker were. We were re-traumatizing our children all the time. So to have a forensic interview, I only had to go to one. I did a lot of the other teen investigations, but the one I went to, the little boy knew we was looking at him, so he put his face against the wall like, hey! so they know there's a two-way mirror that people's on the other side. Yeah, thank you guys for what you do. And they have an awesome director, Shara, right? Shara Reverend? She's in Chicago. She's Chicago, hot course. Chicago. She's been there since the concept of CAC in Chicago. She's been the director there. That's over some 20 years ago. Yeah, she's awesome. Short lady, powerful.
Good morning, everyone. So I'm not going to share a whole lot of information. Monica shared a lot about about advocacy centers, and so I'll talk just a little bit about kind of the history of advocacy centers. Valerie mentioned that it is to reduce trauma. So it is a nationwide movement. Advocacy centers are all over the U.S. There are actually 5 in Cook County. La Rabida services the south suburbs. So this is just one of the cities and neighborhoods or villages that they service. Chicago services the city of Chicago, right? And so like Monica mentioned, reports come to those advocacy centers through law enforcement and child protection. But the CACs also offer other supportive services, like Monica mentioned family advocates, and so those people are there to work with families to connect them to services, to offer support the day of. Families are going through a lot, and it's not just usually child sexual abuse, the one thing that they're dealing with, right? So sometimes they need services like connect me to mental health services if they're interested, or I'm looking for housing because now this abuser is who paid the rent and I can't pay that anymore. So how can I look for housing, and how can I support my family in other ways? We need help with food or any kind of other services. So family advocates are there to provide psychoeducation, support, linkages to other services. All advocacy centers function in similar ways. Chicago CAC is different from La Rabida in that we are co-located, so law enforcement, DCFS, and the Cook County State's Attorney's Office are in the building with us. And we actually used to have medical staff. We had a clinic who was staffed by a couple of different hospitals in the past. We still partner with Lurie, but you'll hear from experts who help La Rabida with their forensic exams, but we also want to offer, advocacy centers want to offer families medical exams as part of their investigation as well. We want kiddos to know that they are okay, that they are not broken because of this very traumatic thing that happened to them. DCFS, I know, isn't here to talk too much about what they do, but partnering in similar ways, right? We are multidisciplinary, so all those different teams are working together to provide better services to families who are going through this. So they do have certain acceptance criteria. So for example, a case that comes to an advocacy center will always have law enforcement, but not necessarily always have DCFS. And that just has to be, someone who lives in the home, someone who's been in a position of trust or authority, teachers, coaches, lives in the home, trust or authority. I'm missing one. What's the other one? Laura? Yeah. There's 3. It'll come to me. But they have different acceptance criteria. So if they don't fit in one of those categories, they may not be involved. So for example, a stranger, right? A stranger case. The child didn't know that person. They may not be involved, but law enforcement will still be involved. My department, so I, as Monica mentioned, was at La Rabida, but I've been working for an advocacy center for probably I started in 2005 at Chicago CAC, was there for about 15 years, came to La Rabida because it was closer to home, and did work in those roles supporting families. And then I'm back at Chicago CAC, and what we do is we provide education in the community. We believe it's an adult responsibility to keep kids safe from abuse, and so we do a lot of education in the community. Again, adult focused, talking to parents, caregivers, teachers, hospital staff, just anyone who works with and around youth about recognizing signs of abuse. So we talk about recognizing, reporting, responding. How we respond in the moment is just as important as reporting, right? So telling a kiddo that you believe them, that what happened to them is not their fault, that you were going to do something to help them. We don't want to promise that it won't happen again because we don't have that control. But we do want to say, I believe you, thank you for telling me, and I will make sure that I help you in any way that I can. So we talk about those things in the community. One of my staff is here. She does have resources, Laura right over here. Just different handouts on what are some of those behaviors that we may see in children who have been sexually abused, what may be common, not common. And Chicago and La Rabida do work together, and a lot of times, I mentioned Chicago handles just cases that have happened in Chicago, so any abuse that has happened within the city of Chicago. However, if a family lives in Lansing, right, and then they went to Chicago and something happened to them there, it would be a Chicago jurisdiction case. However, we may reach out to Laura-Beta and say, hey, this family has no way to get to us or doesn't want to come to Chicago. Can you all do the forensic interview for us? So we do collaborate and work together in different ways. I don't think that I missed anything, but are there any questions? I don't think we've paused for questions. Sure. Okay, well, thank you.
I would just like to add, back with DCFS, because I've been there for 38 years, we had teams that would only deal with like fractures, death, marked abuse, burns, etc. Then we had special teams that deal with the allegation, sex allegation, which was penetration, molestation, risk of sex, exploitation, I think it is. And people who worked in sex abuse did not like to work in the physical abuse team. They hated to see marks on kids' bodies. And us, who worked in child protection, who worked in the teams who worked with abuse and neglect and death, we didn't want to see any grown man touching any babies. So we didn't want those cases as well. So, but for the most part, I think the CAC in Chicago, their team at one time or another only handled sex abuse cases. It may have changed by now, I don't know. But yeah, I did do 10 months of management of the sex abuse team, but that was about it. All right, here you go. Thank you, doctor. This is Dr. Zimmerman.
Thanks for having me. My name is Dr. Emily Sifferman. I'm a pediatrician, and I've done extra training in child abuse pediatrics, so I'm a child abuse pediatrician. So that is an official subspecialty, just like pediatric cardiology. So that's relatively recent that became a thing in 2009, so we're very happy about that. I want to tell you a little bit about what I do, what our team does. I work at Advocate Children's Hospital. We have 2 campuses. One is at Christ, near here in Oak Lawn, and the other one is at Lutheran General in Park Ridge. We have a team that we hope to grow. So it is myself, Kim Souter, our nurse practitioner, is here as well. We have a hospitalist pediatrician who works up north. We have a dedicated nurse who helps us with any child referred to us for sexual abuse and educates our sex assault nurse examiners that work in both of our emergency rooms. Both of them do a lot of community education as well. And then we also have a dedicated social worker for our team. What we do day to day, we do medical evaluations for kids where somebody has raised a concern about abuse or neglect, or they've identified a child that's at risk for abuse or neglect. And we do those consults in the inpatient unit, and also we have an outpatient clinic where we will follow some of those kids after they've been discharged from the hospital, and where we take referrals from the community, mostly from advocacy centers, to do non-urgent medical evaluations of children suspected to have been sexually abused. And we aim to do that in a trauma-informed way, in a child-friendly way. We get referrals from, like I said, child advocacy centers, also directly from DCFS or law enforcement, and also from primary care providers in our own emergency rooms. So there's lots of ways that a child can get to us. People often ask, I'm sure they ask all of you, how do you do this all the time? And of course it's for the kids. And a lot of what we do is not, of course we respond when there is a child that has already experienced abuse, some kind of maltreatment. But we also see kids, like I said, at risk. And so I'm always very happy when we see a child and we're able to say, this is not abuse. Or where we see a family and we've identified a risk factor and we're able to provide them resources. So we do work with our entire pediatrics department, which is very also trauma-informed, and recognizes the importance of social determinants of health, identifying those, and connecting families with resources in the community, you know how important that is, as a way of preventing child maltreatment. What else can I tell you? We do a lot of education, like I said, in the community, but also we have 2 residency programs training pediatricians, so we want them to know how to respond and how to prevent abuse as well. So thank you for having me here today, and I'm happy to take any questions now or later. Yes.
I have a question. Are there any instances or situations where maybe a child or would have to spend time in the hospital, or is it clinic, or are you in hospital? Or
Both, yeah. So we see kids in the inpatient setting. They may be there because they have an injury due to abuse, or they have experienced neglect, a lot of failure to thrive or nutritional neglect. And we will help, we're part of the medical team that evaluates them and gets them better. And then if it's a situation involving DCFS or law enforcement, we make sure that the investigation is medically informed. They understand what's going on. We make sure that the medical evaluation is complete and standard for everybody. So asking the same questions, doing the same studies for depending what the situation is. And making sure we don't miss anything. And then making sure that they have a safe discharge plan and good follow-up.
Thank you. I was hoping she would be here today because she said if I had some emergencies in the emergency room, I would not be here today, but thank you so much. I would just want to add, I remember when the Child Protection Team hospitals came about, a lot of times our kids would go to local clinics or whatever, and they were not properly diagnosed with abuse neglect. But having these teams here on site there, when kids came in, some of the examinations showed they had old fractures. And so it's more than just a one-time incident. So it's been great having them. They were, most of them had became board certified, I think she mentioned, for the most part. And it's just something that, for me, it was nice to work with the doctor. So I was speaking to the three ladies here about, I used to do a DCFS, and they say, come on back. I swear to God, I'm listening to this real good. I'm ready to put an application in. Stop retirement and go back to work. Okay, we have our famous Chief Al Phillips. Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie. Famous. It's a little stretch there. Valerie, I would like to thank you for all that you're doing to draw attention and awareness to this. This is huge for us. Awareness and prevention ahead of time before we get involved. That's the biggest thing. We are all mandated reporters. We talk about, I see some school personnel out there. Yeah. Pam, good to see you out there. If we can get on top of this before we get involved, the child has such a better chance of survival and a successful life. So, our partners with La Revita, it's good to see you here. I've sat in on many of those interviews. You guys do an amazing job. So, very proud to be part of that organization. So, thank you. So, I want to briefly talk about some of the things that we deal with. I went back. Our records go back 13 years for what we have in-house right now. We've had 82 investigations over the years for child abuse. With that, we've had 32 arrests. I got to think there's probably more going on out there than that's actually reported. And that really touches me because these cases are very difficult to prove. Last year I shared a case with you that I investigated. This year I asked Deputy Chief Scott Bailey if I could share one of his cases, and this one's difficult. So I'm going to try and read through some of this, and I apologize if I get choked up on it because this stuff is very real. We deal with it every day. Our officers deal with it, and it's tough. So I'm going to read a case about in 2014, and I don't like to read these too often, but I'm going to go ahead and read a little bit about this. So this is Officer Kulach. He says, I was dispatched to the 17900 block of Wildwood for an unresponsive 3-year-old. Upon arrival, I met with Officer Persak, who was evaluating the vital signs of the 3-year-old. The 3-year-old was lying on the mattress in the living room. There appeared to be some vomit, and the child's head was laying on her back of the mattress, and she was motionless. She was resting and laying in vomit. At that time, EMS arrived and brought the child to the ambulance for further evaluation. The child's right hand was clenched, and it appeared to be stiff, indicative of what appeared to be onset of rigor mortis, which means the child had been there for a while. There were also signs of discoloration in the abdominal area. EMS attached the cardiac monitor, which showed asystole. The child was pronounced deceased at 14:31 hours. There's a lot more into this investigation. These are very challenging cases to deal with. Our officers suspected there might be some form of child abuse that went on there, but of course we can't take anybody into custody right on scene until we have a little more information. So the child had an autopsy the next morning, and it was ruled that it was a homicide. The child had a severed spleen, ruptured Some other broken bones, had a broken jawbone, a cracked skull, and a lot of discoloration from prior bruising. So our investigators ended up bringing the father in for questioning, and he indicated that he may have smacked the child on the back a few times because he was having a problem with potty training. Well, these cases tend to take a long time to get the truth out of people, and our investigators do a great job. And Scott Bailey is very passionate about this case, and he did an incredible job with this. So this happened on a Wednesday. Scott was able to bring the officer or the offender back to Sunday to start telling us detail of what was going on. And he worked this case for probably several hours of interviews. And as you know, we have to record all of our interviews. We give the person the rights. We're not beating anybody. We can't coerce them. We got to do it legit, and our guys do a great job with that. So going back to Sunday, I guess the child had some incidents where she was wet in the bed. And he got him to admit that, yes, I did spank her on the butt. Okay. Well, with these, you got to just pull it out of them, little by little. And by the time he got to Monday, he said, yeah, she had a problem again. I may have hit her with a closed fist. It just kept getting a little more, and a little more, and a little more out of him. By the time he got to Wednesday, he did admit that he took her into the bathroom, and he threw her on the ground, and she hit her head on the toilet. That's where she cracked her skull. This child had been deceased for probably 8 to 10 hours before he called EMS. He had to wait until his wife got out of the house, and then he made up a story, and then he called us. And it was tragic. It gets more tragic though, believe it or not. This case went to trial. He pled not guilty. He said it wasn't me, I didn't do this. Even though we had this recorded on video, his confession, his full confession where he admits to striking this kid several times with the closed fist, breaking her ribs, breaking her skull. And believe it or not, he was found not guilty. So we did an interview with WGN. Scott did an incredible job with that. It was very emotional. He did it in my office, and I was just praying for him the whole time. That he would hold up, and he did a good job with it. But it hurts. It hurts us. It hurts us to see it. So I think the biggest thing is we can get out of this is the recognition that there's probably more going on out there than we really realize. I talked about mandated recorders. But if you see something, say something. It doesn't hurt to call. I know those are difficult phone calls to make, and they're difficult cases for us to investigate, and we don't always get them right. But we got to try. We got to give these children a chance for success in life, to get out of that situation, to help them. We work with DCFS really well. We work with La Rabida. We try and do the best we can for this. But recognition is probably the most important thing that we can do, that we can talk about, and get involved early. So I know that was kind of sad, difficult to get through. Is there any questions I can answer? All right, thank you for your time. Thank you guys all for what you do. You all do an amazing job.
I just want to add that we work very closely with the police officers. Back in the day, you may remember this, I referred to our chief here because we work so closely with the police. We had teams out here that worked in the suburban area and all that. But in Chicago, back in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, they had what you call youth officers. The youth officers were trained on how to respond to abuse cases. When they got rid of the youth officer, a lot of the beat officers came. A lot of the beat officers not used to the child abuse. And so we had to explain to them that we had the right to take a child home. Once a report is made, if information is there, evidence is there, we had the right to remove that child to home. And they would come and say, oh no, you need to go get a warrant. No. And Illinois is probably one of the only states that I know of, I've been to like a lot of states across the country here, who investigators and supervisors have the right to take custody of a child. They don't need the police. Most states across the country have to call the police to get custody of their children, of the children. However, we have to make sure we're doing it right, because you can traumatize the child. And sometimes what happens is that we don't have a lot of information and we would take kids into care. The problem with that is that sometimes the next day we found more information, especially in the middle of the night. Next morning we found out, and so foster parents like, well, what happened? Why are these kids back home? They just got into care. That's what happens. We don't have information in the middle of the night to make sure the kids are safe or not. And I just want to give you one story. Investigators, it's a really hard job, tough job. And officers would see us and they was like, what do you have? We say our clipboard. We had our clipboard, our pen, and that's all we had to take with us. We used to be able to take mace, but mace, the officers told us to stop doing it. We couldn't do it. It's illegal to have mace. But we had a mace on our little chain. But I remember going to a home, And I saw the mother. She said, "You can come on in." I came on in. There was 3 ladies standing behind her and a lady behind me. So when I walked into the home, the lady behind me immediately took the knob off the door. So I'm seeing on this, when you walk into a home, you have less than 30 seconds to clear the room, to make up the room, and who's in that room. She took the knob off, and I never acknowledged it. Normally we go out in twos. I was by myself that day. I think it was God's grace I was by myself, because I knew how I was going to handle it. I ignored it, I didn't acknowledge it, had to convince them that I needed to interview mother by herself, so they finally left, including the lady with the doorknob. So I'm interviewing her, talking to her, and she was appeared to be a harassment case. The neighbors had said that they got into an argument the day before, which happens a lot, harassment cases. And so at the same time, when they come back in, Mom go out so I can interview her guest, the lady with the knob began to put the knob back on. But I'm thinking that if I had been with someone, they might have reacted fast, said, "You can't do that, it's illegal to do that." I stayed quiet, I never mentioned the knob off the door. I stayed professional, I was very calm and cool. I walked up my life, because sometimes it doesn't happen. We have a lot of incidents that happen to our investigators. Broken windows, hit, all kind of stuff. So you gotta be very careful and be mindful. Even officers too. The officers hate domestic violence cases. They hate them, that's the worst cases, because I know from my experience has been that there has been times officers showed up and the person with the gun has shot the wife. Okay. Before they get to the door. Here we have Miss Anna.
Thank you. Thank you, Valerie, and thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you to the village, and thank you to HRC for hosting this event, again, for the second year, to raise awareness about such an important issue, a public health crisis that we're facing today in the United States and across the world. And thank you to all of you who are here working both towards preventing child abuse and neglect, and to those of you who are facing this daily or regularly on the other end, on the downstream side of that, and seeing these cases. The case that Chief here just shared with us is absolutely tragic and devastating. I'm sure it tore at all of our heartstrings, right? And what I start to think about whenever I hear these cases is the prevention aspect of things, and thinking like that dad probably, he never wanted to kill his daughter, right? But he was so stressed, he had so much going against him that it led to that. You shared that it started off with a spank, and then it got more and more and more until this child tragically and violently died. As the theme is today, partnering, working together towards preventing child abuse, that's a lot of what I'll talk about today as well, and I appreciate hearing how many others who are here do work in partnership to really confront this issue head on. And save more lives, save more babies, and prevent child abuse and neglect. So again, my name is Anna Colleagues, and I'm the founder and executive director of Gifts from Liam. Gifts from Liam is a small local nonprofit, actually based out of Park Forest as well. And we are working to help babies thrive, both through pregnancy and infancy. And we also help families heal through pregnancy and infancy loss. Our goal is to reduce pregnancy and infant loss. And we accomplish this through a number of different programs to reach vulnerable families with education and resources on both safe pregnancy and parenting practices. One of those programs that some of you here might be familiar with is our diaper assistance program. And so we provide families in need with free disposable and cloth diapers. And those diapers are packaged with that educational information and distributed through partnerships with community-based organizations throughout Chicagoland, serving families with other needs. In fact, most of the work that we do in our organization is in partnership with others, whether that's our diaper distribution partners, down the road at Mount Zion, they distribute diapers for us to the Lansing community and surrounding communities, our diaper drive partners who help us bring in our donations, because our diaper assistance programs are entirely donation-based. Our volunteers who support the work that we do, or the families that we support. It's all in partnership with each other. So the new spin on the theme this year, I really appreciate. It really resonates with me, since this so closely aligns with the way that we do our work. Last year's theme, for those of you who were here, maybe you remember, maybe you don't, it was growing better together. And this year's theme, Building Together Prevention in Partnership, adds that subtle yet important distinction of partnership being key to preventing child abuse. Last year, I was here with you and I spoke to what I believe to be the most important partnership in preventing child abuse, and that's the parent-child partnership. And I talked about how that partnership begins in pregnancy. And it begins in pregnancy because in pregnancy is when parenting begins. It's in pregnancy that you start to care for your baby by going to your prenatal appointments, following your doctor's recommendations and prenatal guidelines. It's when you start to prepare for the arrival of your baby by getting your environment ready. And sadly, it's also in pregnancy where child abuse and neglect can begin. And often it's at no fault of the pregnant person. They simply haven't learned how to properly take care of their unborn child. So we help families in our work, in their pregnancy and parenting journeys, filling these education gaps as well as the basic needs gaps, such as diapers is a basic need, the most basic need for a baby. Material need, I should say. When a parent is unable to focus on what really matters, being their child's health, safety, and development, they're not able to focus. When their needs are unmet, they're not able to focus on those things that really matter, right? And so I'm not going to give you the same speech as I did last year for those of you who are here and probably remember every single word that I said. I don't want to bore you. And just as the theme for this year's event evolves, so has what I want to share with you. Last year, we were all on the same page as far as what it means to be a quote-unquote good parent. And I'll refresh your memory on that. And we decided that being a good parent generally means someone who's raising an empathetic, honest, self-reliant, kind, cheerful, tiny human. Someone who provides intellectual curiosity and motivates their children to desire achievement. They help protect their children from developing anxiety, depression, eating or substance disorders, and antisocial behavior. And we agreed that being a good parent has little to do with your income, where you live, your education, or any other social determinant of health. At the same time, we also agreed that by this definition, anyone can be a good parent, but that it isn't quite that simple. Anyone can be a good parent if equipped with the proper knowledge and supports. Again, in order to parent well, those basic needs need to be met. And this has been well documented in basic needs research. Conceptually, I personally think this is best explained by Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And if you're not familiar with that, it's depicted by a triangle with 5 layers. So picture a triangle. And then each layer, it represents a different basic human need. So at the bottom of this triangle are your basic needs, your physiological needs. So things like air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing, and certainly diapers fall within this category. Basically, the theory explains that we can only move higher up in these levels when a prior need level has met. So above physiological needs, safety needs, and then there's love and belonging above that, and then there's esteem, and then there's self-actualization at the tip of the triangle. And so before you're gonna focus on safety, you're making sure your basic physiological needs are met. And before love and belonging, your safety needs are met, and so on and so forth. But we're not in school right now, and I'm not here to lecture you. I think what often happens in events like this, in talks, is that we hear a lot of data, statistics, information, acronyms, definitions, and topics like child abuse and diaper need come with a lot of statistics and all of that. And I think it doesn't feel that real. The gravity of these issues don't really sink in for us. So today, I also want to share some stories with you to highlight how real diaper need really is and how that affects families. I asked some folks I work with, some of my partners, to share some stories, some firsthand accounts of families that they've worked with who were experiencing diaper need. So Luz is a volunteer who's been supporting us for a while now, and she used to work in a child care center in the classroom taking care of babies, and she'd be taking care of 4 babies at a time. And she remembers there would be days sometimes when children would run out of diapers in the child care center. So they'd check and see if there happened to be any extra diapers around, if any donations had come in, or some families had extras or something like that. And sometimes they did, but sometimes they didn't. And in those cases, they had to call the parents and say, you have to come pick up your child. We can't leave them in a diaper for more than 2 hours. So the parent would have to leave work or whatever other responsibility they were in the middle of to come pick up their child from daycare because their child didn't have enough diapers. And then she tells me, I remember one specific story where a single mother had kids in almost every room of the child care center, an infant, a preschooler, and a couple of school-aged kids. This mom worked very hard and sometimes still struggled to bring diapers to the center for the week. The baby would come to the child care center with diaper rashes and sometimes even a soiled diaper first thing in the morning, because the mom just didn't have enough diapers for frequent diaper changes. Not enough diapers means that the parent will leave their baby in the same diaper for longer periods of time, causing diaper rashes or even a urinary tract infection, which leads to greater stress on the parent. I think many don't realize the need for more diapers in the community. There are families struggling with having enough diapers for their babies to make sure they are not sitting in a soiled diaper for more than 2 hours. That's why I'm grateful for gifts from Liam, who are dedicated to spreading awareness on diaper need and being part of the ongoing mission to fill the diaper gap. And then there's Jackie, who has been working us for a number of years. She started our first diaper depot, which are locations that collect donations for us on an ongoing basis. And she's also a distribution partner. And she regularly shares stories with me of the families that come to her office asking for diapers. A couple of those are, one time there was a family who came in for diapers with their infant, and they brought in a little girl with them as well, a toddler who they were carrying on their hip. And it was the dead of winter, and she had no shoes on. I asked the family about her shoes, and they told me they didn't have any. Just broke my heart. Then another family called and asked if they could get diapers. I told them the location, and the mom said she would walk over. I asked her where she lived and looked it up. It was about 7 miles away. I couldn't believe the literal lengths she was going to just for diapers for her baby. Instead, I offered to drop them off to her. Now, the last story I'm going to share with you is my own story. My story that I did not share with you last time, but it's the reason why Gifts from Liam exists. I started the organization because when my son was going to be born, he was going to have everything he needed. I had 3 baby showers, I had a good, stable, professional job at UIC, I worked in perinatal care, so I had all the knowledge about pregnancy, I had a great supportive network of family and friends, I had everything going for me. I was in graduate school pursuing my master's degree. I was a dancer. And not once did it cross my mind that my first child would ever not have enough diapers. And then he died. It was devastating to me that even someone in my position, with all the resources, education, tools, all the supports I needed, would lose their child. There are millions of stillbirths, which is a death of a baby in utero after about 5-6 months of pregnancy, but before they're born. And infant deaths happening every year around the world, millions. Many of those are preventable and happening simply due to a lack of information and resources. And so since the day he was born and died, It has been my personal mission, which evolved into our organization's mission, to save more babies by providing the education and resources that quite literally can save a baby's life. So that's what I've been doing to prevent child abuse and neglect. Last year, I invited you to consider action items, action steps you can take in order to prevent child abuse in your own lives, beyond raising awareness, which is an important first step. From something seemingly simple to offering to babysit someone's kid for a couple hours, getting involved in advocacy work, or supporting organizations doing the work with your time, talent, or treasure. As today approached, I reflected on the last year of our work with Gifts from Liam and all the growth and change that's happened and the impact we've been making in supporting families. Today, I invite you all to reflect on what have you been doing to prevent child abuse? And lastly, I'll leave you again with this. The theme for today's event is prevention in partnership. Again, Helen Keller said it well. Alone we can do so little, together we can do so much. It truly takes a village to raise a child right. So let's join forces and partner to prevent child abuse. Thank you.
Before we do the closing prayer, I just have a couple of things. I want to thank Anna. I met Anna, about a year and a half ago, a couple of years ago now. And I just fell in love with her. I also shared with her that I was on a conference call with my Child Abuse of Illinois board. And there now legislation that's going to be passed that they add $70 to the, is this the food stamp card or is it the?
It's a whole separate amount of money that low-income families will get related.
Yes, that is a big deal. That's a big deal because I think you average about 25 diapers per week to go to daycare. So that is a big deal. That's a big deal. And that happens. Also, I want to say that first of all, did everybody have a raffle ticket? A raffle ticket? We're going to do a drawing, and I want to announce a couple of things. I want to announce that on the 14th of April, we're going to be doing an event at Coolidge. It's called, that's the principal over there, Miss Pamela Hodden. We're going to be doing something called Family Coming Together Makes Healthy Minds. So I hope to see you guys there. We're going to have vendors, tables, and everything, and classroom trainings. In HRC, we have a community breakfast coming up at First United Church with Pastor Dave down there. Looking for 3 women, 3 men, and 2 youth to talk about their favorite person of the Bible and the reason why, and what makes them so important today's life, our kids, our girls, and our boys, and our women, and our men. The other thing, we have a concert on September 17th. We're looking for performers at Fox Point, so we're kind of excited about that. Lastly, I just want to tell you guys, thank you so much for coming. My heart is touched, and I need to probably retire, but it's so hard, you guys. And I hear stories with officers saying down there, and I know that feeling of being a case being turned, the judge said no evidence or not guilty, and that have happened to us as well. We've got kids sent home where their kids was clearly abused. Then you had a situation where they were not abused and they wouldn't care, or you went with order protection, they wouldn't care. So it's not a win-win situation in foster care for kids altogether. So, any questions or anything, you guys? I hope you learned a little bit of information, and sure? I think? Okay. Can we do the raffle now? Oh, while she's doing that, back in the corner, the ladies that was doing my the blue nails, if you didn't get it, please have time to do it before they leave. Candy and Miss Kenya, I met them less than a month ago. It is such a shame that when I have over 1,000 contacts in my phone, Miss Mean, 10 out of 10 times, if I talk to you, I'm getting your phone number, your email address. I met them outside the chambers, and we were just talking. I'm a social worker by trade, so I get to be really nosy about certain things. And I told them all about Lansing and Common Grounds and HRC and the village, everything. And so here they are today, you guys. I mean, this is amazing. I thank you guys so much. Yeah, less than a month ago. Okay, ready? I don't know. Let's see. You sure? Okay. All right, this is for two t-shirts over there. They're large and extra large. The number is 177328. It's a red ticket. 177. Oh, okay. doing this right. Oh, another red ticket. Sorry, yellows. This one is 177341. Yeah. Okay. Behind you over there. Okay. How are you guys right now? We're going to have our closing prayer. Is there anything else before we close out? I want to thank all of the panel here. They're very knowledgeable about every subject. I tried to, and she's right. I'm a long-range planner, so yeah, probably immediately after the last one, and like I do next year too. I'm planning right now, so yeah. Oh, sure, of course.
You brought up the diaper legislation. I also just wanted to let you know that there's some stillbirth legislation as well. That's a part of a larger bill. It's HB 003. If you want to check it out, it's the Reproductive Justice and Liberty Act. But part of that that bill, HB 003, is for supporting parents who have endured a stillbirth. So it entitles them to basically receive a birth certificate for their birth, because even though it's a stillbirth, it's still a birth. And every parent who's experienced a stillbirth, should get that recognition and validation of their baby's birth. So check that out. Please support it. HB 003. That will be called Liam's Law if it passes. So that's pretty exciting for my mom heart. And then related to that, we're also currently conducting a survey asking anyone who has experienced a stillbirth if they were informed of that option, because there actually is already a law entitling parents to this document, but no one's being informed of it. So there's been some issues with implementation of this law. So if that's something you'd be willing to share, I'd love to speak with you after so we can get connected and share that information with you.
Thank you so much. I was just thinking about a couple of the other things too, about what you mentioned about the legislation that's passed. The other thing that's passed, as you know, was adoption. Roe and Wade was overturned. And I have to say in advance, I am not an advocate for abortion. I am not. I am advocate for life and death. Unfortunately, this big push for life has not surfaced by people who really concerned about life. 38 years in child welfare, we've never had anyone from pro-life to come to us and say, look, we're concerned about these babies that's being born. How can we help these parents on the front end, even during the pregnancy? So I think about pro-life. If you really truly care, you start right now. And when these babies are born, they're our babies. No offense, that's what I'm saying. All righty, here, Pastor Dave from United First Methodist Church. She's going to give our closing prayer, and thank you so much.
Before we pray, I just want to say one thing. As I was hearing these speakers, and I think everybody in here somewhere was touched in your mind or your heart. You couldn't be by these stories. And so they make a difference. And as I was hearing that, I thought, God understands what's going on. And we just got past Christmas here where we think about the manger and how beautiful all that was. But same time, there was an immigrant family who couldn't find a place to have a baby. And there was a pregnant woman who had to ride a donkey. And nobody would even let her into the house to give birth with no doctor, no obstetrician, no care. And they said, you can go into the barn where the manure and the straw and everything else, and we can. It wasn't a beautiful picture. And so we have a God who understands what's going on. And so let's just have a word of prayer. Gracious God, we thank you for these speakers, for every one of them, and for the agencies and the organizations that they lead and are a part of. Lord, we thank you that they planted seeds and told stories that might have been uncomfortable for us to hear. But Lord, that is what is happening in our world, in our country. And so, Lord, may these seeds be planted and that we can make a difference, and then we can change the mindset of our community and our world, and to make a difference, Lord, where we can. And some of it seems so large and so out of our hands, but Lord, we can make a difference with the people that we touch and are involved with. So Lord, help us to take what we've learned this morning and this afternoon and to make a difference in this community. Lord, be with each person here in this room. Help us to make a difference. Lord, thank you that you care, that you love us, and you too are concerned for those babies and those children. As you said, let the children come unto me. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you guys so much. Please feel free to visit our table. Interested to have literature over there, pamphlets stuff, and the pamphlets for sure. I gave my own kids pamphlets, the adults, when they gave their kids. Mom, we're not going to abuse our kids. No, I know my grandkids. They're not going to touch them, but I want you to know, because there's a lot of first-time incidents happen, and you regret what happened. Like he said, you know, at the time, something happened. But the Pepper's over there, and the library has some books over there. But please stop by one of the tables if you can.
All right.
Thank you guys so much. And listen, at 11 and 12 o'clock, we're going to be planting, I guess it stopped raining, so we can plant pinwheels today still. At 12 o'clock at the village. So be able to come over there to the village and help us plant our pinwheels. And that pinwheels does not protect kids, but it's a representative of awareness of abuse and neglect. All right, thank you so much, you guys.
Oh, well, I have known of some people who've been in trouble with, child neglect. I got 8 grandchildren and 2 great-grandchildren, so, and I love them so. Wouldn't want anything to ever happen to them. Children are innocent, and, we're here to take care of them, raise them, keep them safe. So.